a journey of self-discovery. A year later, it became a journey of remembering. Yet, what I know now is back then I was still seeking. And what I've come to know now is that it's the journey of seeking that brings us the silent, slow stillness of acceptance. And therein lies our own innate wisdom. It's my mission now to eradicate the glorification of hustle culture, as it was my drive in entrepreneurship that led to a greater whole, and that's because I was outsourcing my sovereignty rather than looking within. So let this be your invitation to take a deep breath in and remember that at any time we can shift our thoughts and our feelings to create the outer world in which we wish to live. Soul Seekers, it's time to grow. Let's go. What is up, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. I am your host, as always, Sam Caber, and I am fired up to bring you guys this episode, or should I say, I'm cooled down. I'm getting so cold, it's chilly, because we are speaking with Miles Lukas, and he is one of the Wim Hof instructors that manages North America. By that, I mean Wim Hof, who, if you're not familiar with him, he is the literal Iceman. He has trained so many people in his method, the Wim Hof method. And my guest in this episode, Miles, has been doing the Wim Hof method, certified in it in, I believe, 6 or 7 years, give or take. And his peers actually elected him to be almost like we can think of it as an ambassador for the Wim Hof method, one of 2 people for entire North America. So that's my little tongue-in-cheek dad joke about me being cold. So fired up I'm cold because it's the Iceman's protege, if you will, Miles Lukas. All jokes aside, super stoked for this episode to share it with y'all, because in this one we're talking all things endurance, performance. We're geeking out on breath work, the science behind it, and just so many different exercises, protocols, and ways that you can increase your stamina and endurance and perform at your highest potential through learning how to regulate your nervous system. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with Miles. We talk about a bunch of things, so you're going to want to check out the show notes for all the links. And as always, if you're new to the Soul Seeker podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star review if you enjoyed today's show, because if you did, it's the easiest way to give back to the show and help the show grow. So if you're down with my personal mission of raising the collective consciousness from its fallen state, an easy way to do that is to just give back to this show so the show can grow and help others learn from these amazing guests. With that, enjoy this episode with Miles Lukas. All right, here we are with Miles Lukas. I'm so excited to talk all things breath work. It's specifically in regard to performance, but as always, before we drop into the conversation, we're going to drop in with some breath. Seems very appropriate for this episode. So Miles, for yourself, for me, we'll close our eyes and kind of go inward. And for all of you listening, if you're in a position where it's safe to close your eyes, I invite you to do so and slow down with us. But if not, if you're driving or doing anything else, you can just breathe with us with your eyes open, and it'll still be great. So having said that, just sitting down, shifting from the outer world into the inner landscape, sitting straight up, feeling your feet on the floor, and through the nose with the belly expanding, inhaling all the way up, sipping in a bit more air at the top, and just gently sighing it out. Another big expansive breath all the way up, sipping in a bit more air at the top, rolling up the eyes and hold. Audible sigh, let it go. And one last one, biggest breath yet, all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top, rolling up the eyes, and just sighing it out. Letting the breath come back to its natural state, opening up the eyes, all things. Here we are. Miles, I am stoked to connect with you and talking all things breath work, specifically breath fitness. That's what you're all about. So, welcome to the pod.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be here. It's so cool that this modality of breathing, which is really the beginning of it all, right?
Yeah.
That it's getting more limelight, and you're out there spreading the good word, as am I. And the merrier. I mean, this can be some life changing stuff. You and I know that, and we have to downplay it a little bit. We have to say, I mean, you have to like almost teeter around, knowing, in both of us in our head, we know that this is like super life changing stuff if it hits you at the right time. So, yeah, man, cool to share.
Yeah, the downplaying part is interesting. Let's unpack that. Let's just start right there. Like, tell us a little bit more what you mean about downplaying it.
So, I mean, I got into this stuff. I learned first the Wim Hof method, and it was such a game changer. And then I learned that I have one of the lowest lung capacities that anyone can have. And so that influenced my life in so many different ways. I thought at first it was just a little bit, but it turns out I was a mouth breather when I slept,
Hmm.
and my poor lung capacity would give me, when I would jog, I would get pains in my sides, and I didn't even understand. Into my 40s, I was an athlete and I could sprint, but I could not go long distances, and I could not figure out why, because I would get those pains, and I didn't even understand how other people could do it. It just didn't make sense to me. And then once I learned this stuff, man, I mean, I couldn't jog 2 miles into my 40s, believe it or not. It's almost embarrassing to say. But now I can, like, I jog barefoot on the concrete for as long as I want. Like, there is no, I can see how you could go as long as, if your breathing gives you the energy that you need, then there's no end to it.
And you're a kiteboarder too, right?
Oh yeah, I love kiteboarding. My latest tool right now is I just got a street mountain street snowboard, an electric snowboard for the street, which is
Wow.
the coolest. It's called a summer board, and so you're balancing on two wheels, although it has four other wheels to keep you going. But so yeah, just to bring it back, it's tough to tell people that don't know about breathwork at all that this
Mhm.
will change your life in 10 different areas. And so that's why we have to downplay it, because you're like, you got to just trickle it in and let them know, like, hey, what kind of issues do you have? Really? Because it doesn't matter what you have. There's probably some sort of breath work, or at least something to focus on that would help you with that. And so that's why we have to downplay it and trickle it in, and then let them figure out, like, oh man, well, is it good for sleep? Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is. Is it good for digestion? Yeah, as a matter of fact. And then all of a sudden, let them, unlock the rest of the doors.
Yeah, it's so true. For me, I got into breath work. My first experience was a breath work journey. I typically like to categorize breath work in two categories. Like there's breath work journeys that specifically to activate sympathetic nervous system, fight or
Hmm.
flight, address like trauma and things like that. And then there's breath work exercises, which are going to be everything else pretty much. I like to keep it super, super simple like that. And to your point of downplaying it as well, like, you wouldn't want to just like throw someone into a breathwork journey that isn't ready for that. And that was my gateway and literally feeling reborn after that first breathwork journey. It was wild. And now, like I'm around the time you and I connected, just in the past month or two, I've started to be like, all right, I really want to explore breath work more for performance because it's absolutely helped me with performance, swimming, surfing, even lifting weights. It's wild to me after weightlifting from high school to about 31 years old, like 6 years ago, my whole life weightlifting, whatever, taking a break over the past 6 years, now just getting back into weightlifting these past few months and being like, whoa, now that I'm not disassociated from my body like I was that whole time living, and I know how to breathe properly, it changes the game with weightlifting. So for me, I kind of got in like through this like emotional side. For you, did you get in with breathwork specifically performance, or what was kind of your way into it?
I mean, I watched in 2016. I watched Wim Hof on Joe Rogan's podcast,
Hmm.
and I like to get high, and it got me high. It got me super high out of the gate, just following along, and I'm like, "What is going on here?" And then it started to, and I got. Not only do you get high, but you get in this meditative state, and I love the fact that there are mechanical ways to get into that state. You follow the steps, then meditation is just a result of the steps that you took. And so it made me realize, man, I've been meditating since I was a little kid. I grew up a single kid, single mom, and I had a lot of free time on my hands. And so I had been doing this stuff. And I did, like, I think right before I learned the Wim Hof stuff, I was doing a little bit of transcendental meditation.
Hmm.
And I had a really good one early on, like within the first week, and I was chasing the dragon ever since. I was like, man, how come it can't be, it was so good. And it turns out it was because I just wasn't, I was breathing different that day, and I didn't even realize it. And now I can get there. I mean, anytime I want to, absolutely every time. And so it's just an amazing world. You can go inside and see what's going on in this scrambled noodle, and come
Yeah.
back with some fascinating data.
Yeah, for me personally, I've never been a big meditator, and breath work helps. I did TM too, I think back in 2018, and I tried my hardest to do it twice a day, and I was just like, I didn't get it, back then. And even now, I mean, I don't do TM anymore, but I'm not a regular meditator. But what I do, which I think a lot of people do with breath work, is they do their breath work and then they add a few minutes of meditation at the end. And just doing breath work first, it gets to that place where in 20 minutes, at least for me, if I'm sitting quietly in my thoughts, like maybe minute like 12, 15, or even minute 20 in meditation, I'm finally like getting there.
Oh
So,
yeah, totally. Well, and after I started to get there, I was in this documentary, DMT Quest. I don't know if you're familiar with that one,
is that the
but
one with Rogan? Which one is that? DMT Quest?
Wim Hof's in it, Mike Tyson's in it. There's a bunch of people in it.
Probably
Um,
saw it a while ago. I'll have to check it
Yeah,
out.
it's super cool. I mean, his whole DMT Quest, the company, their goal was to figure out if we release DMT
Hmm.
endogenously and how and when and how to do it and stuff. And so they brought me in at the end of that production and did brain scans before and after the breath work. And we've done it a bunch of times since. So I have a super good understanding of how different breath works affect your brain. And so to me, it's just, I took what was at first, the first time we did it was 20 minutes. I saw how I felt. Yeah, I saw my brain scans, amazing. And then, and I've condensed that more and more. So the faster you can get in there, then the faster you're in, the faster you're out, the more of your day you have to do everything else. So yeah, man, this stuff
Hmm.
is where it's at.
That's really cool. And when did that documentary come out?
It might have been 2019,
Okay, yeah.
maybe
And then
2020.
you were telling me that you were like selected or voted by your peers at Wim Hof to be a represent. What's that about?
Yeah, so they created a global instructor panel. So they took
Hmm.
two people from each country, each continent, and so I represent myself, and another fella, Bob, represents North America, all of North America, Mexico and Canada, which is crazy because those Canadians are the most hardcore Wim Hofers ever. So much respect
Fair.
to them.
Yeah, versus you being in San Diego.
That's right. We
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
I did notice the people in San Diego and Miami and the southern folks, we shiver quite a bit faster when we all get together at the big and have big ice baths and stuff like that. So,
That's great.
yeah.
So so you're, what is that exactly? You're a representative of Wim Hof, and you represent one of two people for North America.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? Like, do you train other Wim Hof instructors, or what exactly does that mean?
So no, more or less, we're getting to the what we're gonna do is still in the works, but the we help out the other instructors as far as just following what InnerFire, what the company wants people to do, and
Mm.
so they look to us for questions, and it was kind of something I always did with my friends anyway, because I've been an instructor for 6 years now, and so 7 years, geez. Um, so yeah, so people just were always reaching out to me about, just how to do workshops and how to fill workshops, and so I just continue to do that, but just on a bigger scale.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so going back to the science and like the what's happening in the brain, all that, my background with breath work is definitely more from like a spiritual yogi perspective, and then science in general for me has always been so hard for me to retain. There's those certain things in life where it just comes naturally, and then the other things you have to work so hard. And I wish that like I study breath work too, and sometimes
Uh-huh.
I'm like, all right, yeah, practice it, right? And I know quite a bit, and I have it retained. I would call it like basic stuff in
Mhm.
terms of the science, but I do get asked this question a lot, and I think a lot of people listening would be curious. When you were talking about like what goes on in the brain, and you were studied in the DMT Quest documentary, could you just speak to that a little bit more?
Have you ever felt overwhelmed by emotions and unsure how to move through them? Sam created the Breath Club to help you find calm and clarity. In this free online community, Sam teaches how to regulate your nervous system through breathwork and process emotions effectively. Did you know that most emotions only last 90 seconds when you fully allow yourself to feel them? This is called the 90-second rule, and it's a powerful tool backed by science for emotional healing. Each week, Sam hosts live calls to guide breathwork practices and create real connection. You'll also get access to an online course and pre-recorded breathwork videos. The link to join is in the show notes.
Oh, sure. I could talk tons about it. The big thing that we saw that you can see in the documentary it's free on YouTube, DMT Quest. And lots of cool stuff's happening. The next ones should be coming out. We've done a lot more since then.
Cool.
But what they were trying to prove was in clinical study in Michigan University, they were injecting people with DMT and taking a look at their brain. And what was happening is gamma brainwave frequency was just shot through the roof. So your head lights up. Gamma brainwave frequency is the fastest, the highest frequency brainwave. And so that is associated with a meditative state in a high functioning meditative state. So flow state, or something where your processes are really kind of firing. And that's really interesting too, because if your brain waves are moving faster, then perhaps your decision making is a little bit faster. And when your decision making is a little bit faster, well, does time slow down a little bit? I don't know. I mean, you're kind of changing your relationship to
Hmm.
everything when you get into that gamma brainwave state, and that happens also to be one of the first signs of early Alzheimer's is a lack of gamma brainwaves and a lack of cerebral spinal fluid. Well, coincidentally, the Wim Hof method engages the cerebral spinal fluid. You get a big dose of cerebral spinal fluid in your head, and you get that activation. In a good session, a significant session, you get that activation of gamma brainwaves, which and again, that is you can feel it. I mean, your hair feels like it's on fire. You felt it the first time
Hmm.
you did, because holotropic breathing. I think that's kind of what you started too, was holotropic breathing. Am I
I did
correct with that?
transformational breath. Have you tried
Okay.
that style?
No, I don't think I have. Is that, yeah, tell
It's
me
like
more about it.
it's a style. People have tried to correct me in the past be like, no, it's called Wim Hof or it's called holotropic. And I'm like, no, the style is called transformational breath. It's an actual like brand and they train instructors. But no, it's about an hour and a half or so journey, and it's in and out through the mouth pretty much the whole time. And then they have you tone, and part of the toning is like vocal toning. Another is like
Oh,
a tantrum, banging your feet and your hands, and then another is they come over top of you and over the top of you, and then you push your legs up on their chest and you're toning. I just remembered that first
wow.
one. This dude, it was gnarly. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
the style I'm trained in. What I do, mine's somatic breath work, but I kind of loop in my own thing and do it my own way. That said, when I did that first breathwork journey, and it's always like warning right here, like a precaution, like probably scaring people away. But it was super safe space, all things husband, wife team went in there, all the things, and then started the journey. All of a sudden, though, who knows what time is? My whole body was vibrating. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how I got there. I thought I was having a seizure and I was going to die. And then I had so much compassion for my cousin who has epilepsy, and he's had so many seizures in his life. And then I heard the instructor's voice, and he was coaching me to breathe and whatever he was saying. And that's when I like surrendered to it. This is before I got into plant and earth medicine and, cold plunges and really deep with the concept of surrender. But I couldn't tell you what was happening from a science point of view. I'd love to hear if anything comes through for you. But when I finally surrendered, that was that feeling of just total peace and bliss and understanding. And that was a spiritual awakening experience in itself.
Yeah, it sounds like it from that recipe. Man, that's like checking all the boxes for sure. That's really cool. The vibrations for sure. The mouth breathing. Kind of an interesting fact that I think a lot of people don't know is that when you do nose breathing, when you do the Wim Hof method with nose breathing, you actually detract from the sort of the mental experience, because we need a vascular constriction in the frontal cortex. We need it to constrict so that we disassociate from stress, from the outside world, just from the focus of the outside world. And when you use nose breathing, you get more nitric oxide. That's your vascular dilation. So you're actually counteracting what we're trying to do when you use nose breathing for it. Even though we would instruct people that have never done it before, you still get some of the sensations using nose breathing, but you're holding back what you could if you use the mouth breathing. So there's that happens. And then the vibrations, man, everything is frequency. I think, and this is just anecdotal, but I mean, when you engage with your nervous system in a significant way like that, you start to feel it. You start to feel your nervous system, and it does. You feel like you're vibrating, and it's that means you got a real nice dose, and everything was working perfect.
Yeah, I've danced with the toad medicine, Bufo, quite a bit, quite a bit. Very,
Okay.
very, very familiar with that one. Have you done that medicine, 5-MeO DMT?
No, I
Yeah.
haven't. I guess high doses of MDMA and mushrooms have been pretty much the extent.
The interesting thing about 5-MeO and all of my experience with the different medicines and things like that, and various breath work and practices and whatnot, is nothing takes you to the same place as a breath work journey, kind of like what I just mentioned, my experience to 5-MeO. It's very similar. You inhale
Mm.
and then you go offline. So many people that I've been part of probably 1,000 ceremonies at this point, over a
Oh wow.
thousand. And yeah, there's people default mode network, it goes offline, and
Mm.
then there's vibrating, all kinds of different ways that people release the trauma that they're holding on to. And that's kind of the experience how it's been for me with breathwork journeys, where it's the default mode network that's going
Hmm.
offline. The body's expressing itself for all that stuff that we've carried. Anyways, though, so
Yeah.
that's, yeah, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that term too, because that is the default mode network. That really is. I think that that is explaining exactly the frontal cortex activity. So the prefrontal cortex has that activity. Once that diminishes, you get dizzy. You get disassociated in a positive way, and that's it.
Mhm.
That's when you're disconnected. So what's neat is too, when we've done brain scans again, for stuff that's unpublished that hasn't been out yet, I can see the type of breath work that knocks out that activity. And so then now you're down to like baseline, sort of, where you're not concerned with the things around you. You're not concerned with things. And then you use another set of more continuous breathing, and then that's what starts to activate gamma. So then you get yourself in a meditative state, and then you set yourself on fire, and all types of, I could tell you some other cool stuff about that state. But
Please.
well, so one of my favorite things, my favorite thing that happened was we went to a clinic that does brain scans, and then they assess people for deficiencies, and then they give you protocols, months and months long protocols that will help repair those deficiencies. And so outside of the documentary, I had the doctor take a look at my brain scans before I did any breath work. And he said, okay. He said, well, it looks like we can tell that you probably have ADHD, and you have a poor short-term memory, particularly for names and faces. He was excited about most people can remember faces. He was like, not you. I'm like, oh my God. So I go home and I tell my wife and kids, like, oh, they said I have ADHD and a poor short-term memory. And they were like, yeah, no, Dad, that sounds about right.
That checks out.
Yeah. And then he looks at my brain scans after, and he doesn't know what we've done or anything like that. Like he knew kind of what we did, but he doesn't know how long it took or anything like that. And he looks at my brain scans after. No ADHD, no short-term memory issues. So and that was 20 minutes. I've gotten that down to 10 minutes now, but in 20 minutes or in 10 minutes of breath work, you can change your short-term memory. And I think it lasts about an hour, if not more. But you can there's a cool online memory test from Cambridge University, created these tests, and you could do the test. It's free. And then, maybe do it a few times so you know kind of what your baseline is, and then do the test, do the breath work, do the test again, and sure enough, you're going to get a stronger, a higher result. You're going to get your short-term memories better in that short amount of time, and that is applicable for when you're on a podcast, when you have to give a speech, when you have to have words come out, when you have to be somewhere and remember a bunch of names and faces. Like almost nobody knows that breathwork can do that, because I've searched on Google to see if anybody's searching for it, so if it's something that I should put out there. But it doesn't matter, because nobody's searching for it, because nobody even knows that that's possible. So I mean, the stuff that we can do, it's almost endless, and we probably haven't discovered it all.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I find that fascinating. Sometimes, we don't know what to search for, and sometimes we search for things and then we can't find it, right? So maybe there is someone, I don't know. Either way, though, not to go down that rabbit hole. That is amazing. What comes up for me is like, I like to do hot cold therapy at the gym, and my cold plunge at the gym, like a lot of times it's a warm plunge, but today it was nice and cold. So that was really great. And the times that it's a more warm plunge, which I don't know what it is when it's a warm plunge, maybe like 55 or something. It's not cold, enough, put it that way. And I'll be in the cold plunge, then I'll go back into the steam room, and I'll just be kind of sitting there. I'll be like, all right, okay, cool. But a day like today where it was nice and cold, and then I get into the steam room and I'm just like straight there in that meditation. And that's what it feels like to me, what you're describing with like the ADHD and the memory and all of that. Because when I have like that warm-ish plunge and then I go to the steam room, I still have circling thoughts and I'm still like just whatever, but when it's cold, I go straight to just meditation, just like I just drift away. I speak a little bit more in like fluff or esotericism as opposed to science and data, but are we talking about the same experience more or less?
I mean, that sharpness of the cold is really special, and you're getting a significant dose of adrenaline with the kind of the sharper it is, probably the more of a dose you get. And then, of course, that changes your memory. Actually, that's kind of a sharp dose of adrenaline, right? It dilates your pupils, your skin gets more sensitive, your hearing changes. And that's actually why people have PTSD, because they got such a sharp dose of adrenaline in that moment that now this stuff is implanted in them. So yeah, of course, adrenaline for sure gives you that boost in memory. That's when memories get implanted, actually. So yeah, that's why if you feel sharper, if you mentally sharper from a sharper dose of cold, that makes a lot of sense.
So going back to what you're talking about with this, starting with 20 minutes with the brain scan and then the ADHD is completely gone or it's reduced, would you say?
I mean, he said that it was gone completely.
Okay.
He said
Gone
I did not have
completely.
it after. Yeah.
And now two questions here. And now you have it down reduced to 10 minutes. One is the most obvious question. What exactly are you doing? What kind of breath work? Because people are going to want to know that. The
Sure.
second is I imagine it has compounding events, and that's kind of anecdotal. You could say, yeah, I've experienced that, but have you done studies with that as well?
No, no, not at all. No studies
Okay.
yet. Other
But
than the
anecdotally, you could probably tell, right?
well, yeah, the ADHD. Yeah, I mean ADHD to me is kind of anecdotal from it seems like, but yeah, but the memory stuff, you can just do the memory tests, and you could try it before and after, and then the protocol. The protocol is, the first time I did it, it was first the Wim Hof fundamentals, and then I did the advanced, and the advanced is just no. The difference between the advances, there aren't long breath holds, so you're really just kind of getting your CO2 lower and lower and lower. So you could, any kind of sort of continuous hyperventilation would do it. Um, my protocol is I change your breath every minute, and so we really kind of tap into the monkey mind, and it goes by in a flash, and then we sort of just use all the different fun modalities that I like. Even at one point we do go in and out as fast as you can go, which is insane. Go in and out as fast as you can go for 15
Through the mouth?
seconds. Yeah, through the mouth. The whole thing's through the mouth.
Yeah.
Pause and swallow, because you can only go in and out as fast as you can go for 15, 20, 30 seconds. And so we do a couple of those. One of my favorite ones is you do a full breath in and an audible exhale, right? Like we were doing it today on the beginning. So you give it like a nice big sigh, and then you push it out of your belly. So then emptying completely. So really, just a real continuous 10-minute session that just lights up everything. There's a little bit of the vibration from the audible sigh, and lots of other things. Just making sure everything's connected. We compartmentalize everywhere, and then we do a breath hold at the very end. One nice long breath hold, and you're just in space if you want to be, or man, your mind's eye is as clear as it gets, man. It's like when you close your eyes, that the things that you see in your mind's eye, they just become more clear. And then, the shapes start to make recognizable shapes, and all types of very cool stuff happens with a little bit of practice.
That's amazing. And the breath hold, I imagine, is at the bottom
Yeah,
of
I
the
don't usually
exhale.
do bottom breath holds because I think that's a little bit more
Yeah.
sympathetic.
So-
So I call it neutral. So neutral air
Okay.
pressure in or out. So if you're sitting up, you got about 40% left. If you're lying down, you probably have about 30% left. This one I do lying down, but it really depends on your posture and where your neutral zone is.
Right. And Wim Hof, in and out for about 30 counts or so. And then I think it's a breath hold at the bottom and then an inhale and a hold for like 15 seconds. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, he says with no air in your lungs. He also speaks 6 languages, and his English can be a little iffy. So you let the air out. He really means at neutral. There's a little
Oh,
debate
okay.
on that, but he means with you still have air in your lungs. You have just released the air without pushing any air out. So there's still air in there.
And then last question, then we'll get into a little bit more specific performance stuff. But
Sure.
for what you just described of doing like all these different styles of breath work in and out through the mouth, fast, slow, breath hold at the end, help with ADHD. Do you have a recording of that? Because I'm sure some people are listening or be like, wait, what did he say? Like, how do I do that? Do you have anything more on that?
Yeah, sure. I think the latest one isn't uploaded to school yet, but school with a K, SKOOL.com/breath. is going to be my course that's for everyone. So I have a course that's just for breath mastery for Jiu-Jitsu, but the course for everyone is a third posted right now. And in the next 3 modules, one of that, a guided session and a group guided session will be in that. So yeah, guys can check that out.
Yeah, the link's in the show notes. So if you want it right now, at least at the time of this recording, that can change over time as things do, right? But right now it's free to join. Miles is a breath fitness school community. So I encourage you guys to check that out. And in terms of performance specifically, like what do you recommend for people like myself or anyone listening? I can think of my friend of mine who kind of got me into this and was like, oh, I'd be into that breathwork thing you do if it could help me with my running, you know?
Right.
Yeah, what do you recommend for people that are just like starting out with breathwork or new to it and really want to up their endurance and their stamina?
Yeah. So, I mean, knowing your O2, CO2 balance, super important, right? Knowing that a little bit of air hunger, if you can control the pace, is quite useful. When your air hunger, meaning your CO2 is a little bit high. When your CO2 is high, oxygen releases from the hemoglobin into your tissues better. Patrick McEwen, the Oxygen Advantage guys, kind of follow that very closely. So a little bit of nose breathing when you jog, allowing for some air hunger when you are controlling the pace. But then what is not talked about very often, which really surprises me, one of my instructors, Master Rickson Gracie, was a big advocate of hyperventilation for different periods and for different reasons. So when you're doing something that's high exertion, you don't want an air hunger. You don't need an air hunger because your CO2 is building up as quickly as you can stand it. And that's usually when your CO2 builds up too much, then that's when you get this mental acuity diminishment. So if you're talking about combat sports, MMA or Jiu-Jitsu and these things, you can't control the pace. And your CO2 is building up quite fast. So nose breathing is nice when you can control the pace. But if you can't, or if the exertion level is high, then knowing how to use different breath patterns that will help either keep your core strong, or maybe you need to get your heart rate down. Now you can use kind of more of a Wim Hof style because if you're sitting somewhere in between rounds of lifting. And my favorite analogy, if you call it that, is Sam. So when do you start, when you're exercising, when do you start breathing heavy?
When I'm out of breath.
When you get tired, right?
Yeah.
You start breathing heavy when you get tired. But what happens if you start breathing heavy before you get tired?
Right. Then you're priming it and you're ready to go, right?
You wouldn't get tired as quickly.
Yeah.
And so that is like the one thing that I don't know that it is. Master Rickson is one of the only people I've ever heard talk about that for performance. And there's a big, heavy emphasis for nose breathing for performance now. But I mean, I got to tell you, man, those guys that are those air sniffers that are just want to think that it's all nose, they're not in situations where they can't control the pace or it's super high exertion, in my opinion. I know there's a few of them out there that are, but you could also look at the structure of someone's face. There's a few, like there's one sprinter that breathes with her nose when she sprints. And then there's like one fighter that mostly breathes with their nose. But the structure of their face will show you that they have very useful nostrils. You can see that they can breathe easy with their nose. And not everybody is built like that. And so dumping CO2 quickly with forceful exhales keeps your core strong. And that is a tool that you can use 3 to 5 forceful exhales when you even have the slightest iota that you're getting tired. If you think you're about to get tired, 3 to 5 forceful exhales will dump CO2 fast enough while keeping your core engaged. So you can use that when you're lifting, when you're pushing something, when you're wrestling somebody, when you're punching. All those things we've heard, kung fu, xia, when you're making these noises when you do it.
Right.
We've heard Serena Williams, xia, when she's hitting the tennis racket. That noise is creating a forceful exhale because she's closing the aperture, and you're pushing out through that more closed aperture, and so your core's strong. But now you're also continuing to breathe. So that's the mistake that people make, is when they need their core to be strong, when they're hitting something, pushing something, they hold their breath. Well, because that's the right thing to do, because they need their body to be strong, the strongest in that moment. But if you need to keep up that pace or keep up that exertion, then you can just close the aperture, push out through your teeth, push out, curled tongue, pursed lips, whatever you want to do. Make a noise. Doesn't matter. It's all part of it. In Jiu-Jitsu, we'll even add in a pattern. You can add in like some
I
sort of
haven't seen
pattern
that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's a fun one too. Whatever you were.
That sounds like you're in a jazz band or something.
I've been accused of whistling jazz while I was rolling with somebody, but I'm like, that was just the song I was listening to on the way into the gym that day.
That's funny.
Yeah, man, it keeps the airflow moving, but it allows me to, them to put a knee and stomach as one of the positions, allows them to sort of try and crush my core, and it's not going to crush my core, and I continue to breathe while, if I'm going for a sweep or any of that stuff.
So it sounds like it really depends on the sport then. A lot.
It depends on knowing where the exertion is needed, and what it depends not so much on the sport, because the principles are all the same. It depends on what you're doing exactly. So if you're in the midst of action, forceful exhales through the mouth are going to help you either create an energy reserve so that you don't get tired, or help you recover if you were getting tired.
So what would that look like? You could choose a sport, whether it's Jiu-Jitsu or something. Could you just give us a quick little demo?
Yeah, sure. So say what's going to happen is you're going to hold your breath in Jiu-Jitsu all the time. Everybody does. Core is strong. So if I get a hold of someone, I'm holding my breath. One of the reasons to use the pattern, I guess I'll share with that in a second. So I swept somebody. I realize that I'm holding my breath. I know that I'm gonna get tired 2 seconds from now. So a few forceful exhales. I'm on top. Now I can probably control the pace a little bit more. I'm gonna use forceful exhales till I can get back to nose breathing. If I can nose breathe, then I've recovered. If I'm about to exert again, then I might use a few forceful exhales again before or even during the movement.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. As you know, I've done one Jiu-Jitsu class. I missed last week when I was supposed to get back on it, and here it is again tonight. What's that?
I say respect. There's respect. You got on the mats once. It's good.
Probably like standard. Someone goes once. Yeah, and then today it's 100% rain. Like it's just been raining nonstop. I'm like, do I want to go? Do I not want to go? And I'm like, it'll be a game time decision. But I am getting back on the mat, and it was fun to go once. So Jiu-Jitsu is for sure not my sport, but it sounds like you did mention it could be before or during like the move. So for a good rule of thumb, I mean, let's take running. I think that's a better example because you're always running, right? Yep. There's no pause in running. Yep. So how would this apply to running then?
Okay. So jogging, you're using nose breathing. Running, you're controlling the pace the whole time for the most part. You're not always controlling the exertion because there's hills, or you gotta pause to drink water or whatever it is, or clear your nose or something like that. So nose breathing with a tiny bit of air hunger while you're at this pace that you can control. Now you need to switch to a hill. So a few forceful exhales with your steps as you switch to the hill. Or you're about to take a drink of water. You don't want to get tired because you're holding your breath. So a few forceful exhales before you take a drink of water. Then you're what Wim Hof would teach us. So he is a very accomplished hiker, right? So hiked to Mount Everest, to the death zone without shorts on, without a shirt on, without shoes on. Like he's a wild guy and can hike just for a crazy amount of time. And so what he would say is that he uses a bit of over breathing, so that if you stumble, if you have to take a drink, if you never get behind on your energy level, so you don't get tired. So he's breathing more than he needs to. And then what we would do is take 5 big breaths. And then every once in a while, we would pause with a full breath. And that does 2 things. That allows you to feel your own CO2 level and kind of feel where you're at, because you're always sort of monitoring your energy level. When you have a pause, you can be a little bit more thoughtful about how you feel. And then also, when you pause with a full breath, you're creating a denser air pressure, so that when you go to higher altitudes, pausing with a full breath is an amazing way to just create that denser air pressure, and then you don't get the same lightheadedness, that high altitude sickness kind of stuff. And so that's useful for sports too. So sometimes I go train in Denver, and it's about 6,000 feet up. And I'm not used to doing that. And I'll go to a competition class there, when I'm used to training in San Diego. And so I know I have to breathe more. And then I might even, if I get a little bit lightheaded at all, I'll take a full breath and I'll lock in a full breath for a moment and just create that denser air pressure. And then a molecular biologist would tell you that with the denser air pressure, you are forcing oxygen into your tissues in a better way. So all kinds of tips and tricks that you can use throughout this stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like where to start, right? So I'm thinking about like when I'm surfing, one thing that I've been doing is like each stroke, each time I'm paddle for each arm, forceful exhale through. I think I'm going through the nose, actually. I'll have to check. I've been out of the water for a couple of weeks now. And then the other thing too is like in between sets when the waves are coming, it's like, to your point, all right, prepare like with my breath. And now after a wave crashes and then I have that time, I just power through it. Right before that, then I would do 3 forceful exhales, right? And just like power through real quick.
Yeah, no, that's great with the strokes, because that is, I mean, depending on the waves, man, that's a lot of work. That's a sprint, essentially, a slow moving sprint, or it's a sprint worth of exertion for sure. So yeah, forceful exhales with each one of your paddles, man, is going to keep you going a lot longer. And then, yeah, exactly what you're doing, priming yourself up a little bit, making sure you have plenty of energy for when the next wave happens. I think that's super useful too. And then, people would say, you don't want to do any kind of hyperventilation around water, but that's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about a few big breaths. We're not talking about like continuous hyperventilation or anything that's really lowering your CO2 to any significant level whatsoever, or any breath holds of extended periods of time that aren't forced by some big wave. So just to caveat that, no hyperventilation in the water. We're just talking about a few big breaths.
Very important distinction. So thank you for bringing up that disclaimer, which also this has been floating in my head a few times. So now feels a good time to talk about it. And speaking about hyperventilation, inhaling and exhaling through your mouth, circular connected breathing, I call it a lot.
If you're looking for a powerful and transformative experience for your next event, consider bringing in Sam Kabert as a keynote speaker. Sam's message of soul life balance and his expertise in mental health and mindfulness resonate deeply with audiences. He not only inspires with his story, but also offers practical tools like breathwork to help attendees regulate their emotions and reconnect with themselves. You can even have Sam lead a guided breathwork journey, creating a truly unforgettable experience. To learn more or book Sam for your event, check out the link in the show notes to book a call with Sam now.
Does it matter? Like for me, first thing I do when I wake up is I do my breath work, kind of like a Wim Hof style, circular connected breathing. If we're looking at performance, would it be better do you get the same benefits just doing that any time of day, regardless of when the workout or the activity is, or is it better to do it right before it, taking water sports out of it and maybe saying that we're going for a roll on the mats or a run, a jog, whatever, do like 5-10 minutes of say Wim Hof or something and then go do the activity? Is that more helpful than doing it hours before?
Is it more helpful? Hours before, is it useful? Yes. Because it's a nice workout for your breathing system, and then you're engaged with your fascia, just like it would be nice to stretch that morning. It's also good to stretch right before you go. And then right beforehand, is it good? It can be super good, particularly for competition, where if you ever have an anxiety, if you ever have an adrenaline dump, then that's oftentimes why people don't perform as well when they get to competitions. It's because they're getting that adrenaline dump. So you can give yourself some adrenaline. You can start the dump before you get in the competition and actually relieve anxiety and that adrenaline dump during. So some Wim Hof style breath work there. And let's just add in one more thing. It's good to be strong on both ends of the spectrum, because we are quite capable of so much more than what we put our bodies through, right? No lions and bears are chasing us anymore, but we're capable of an awful lot. So we are not really pushing ourselves to the limit on either ends. We're not really breathing as hard as we're capable of breathing, and we're not also holding our breath or doing light breathing as capable as we would be. So it is long-term benefits to do static breath holds without any hyperventilation at all. Just do static breath holds to increase your CO2 tolerance. And that also increases the moment when you start to produce lactic acid and that sort of stuff. So both ends of the spectrum are great, because we're talking about performance. We're talking about like the best that we're capable of. So long-term benefits, you do those static breath holds. And the rumor is, if you do 5 static breath holds of over 30 seconds, no hyperventilation, just hold your breath until you get to a high urge to breathe, that you will actually release oxygen-rich, the reserve of oxygen-rich blood in your spleen, and your spleen will decrease like by 15%. And so now you have more oxygen-rich blood, EPO, red blood cells, and you potentially could utilize oxygen better, which lasts anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. So both of those cool things can happen. So you do some static breath holds first, perhaps, to just get yourself comfortable with high CO2, and then you might do some Wim Hof style breath, or just something to really engage everything. I think people would be surprised to learn how quickly that you can make your breathing process work. So, like, have you ever heard Andrew Huberman talks about the theory of antagonist muscle activation? You ever heard of this? So,
Oh, right. Yeah.
yes, it's so cool. It's like if you can't, you touch your toes, you test your toe touch, and then you activate the tops of your legs while the bottoms are soft, and you do it for 30 seconds. And now all of a sudden, in 30 seconds on each leg, you can touch your toes further. So you just got more flexible in 30 seconds, which blows Jiu-Jitsu guys' minds away, because everybody wants to be more flexible, but it's really about activation. So the same thing happens with your breathing process. It really only takes you essentially 30 seconds of hitting all the spots, and then in a few minutes, now you've changed your vital capacity, you've changed your breathing capacity. So a little bit of Wim Hof breathing do that, but really just a couple minutes worth of exercises, breathing exercises will do that. And that's going to be a big game changer for any type of athletic endeavor.
And static breath hold. Can you kind of explain that a little bit? I feel like that's a term that I've heard in the past, but it's not something that is really common in what I've heard. So what exactly
Okay.
is that?
Oh, just meaning so no hyperventilation beforehand. So you're just at CO2, normal CO2 levels now. So like if you're familiar with the nose clearing exercise that the Oxygen Advantage guys do, you just hold your breath until you get to a high urge to breathe. And that's a static breath hold. So you didn't do any preparation beforehand. And
On inhale or exhale?
again, you could hold it at neutral.
Oh, hold it. Okay, so basically, if because I'm going to try this for myself, but
Yeah.
also I'm hoping a ton of people listening are going to try it for themselves too. So I want them to know how to do it clearly. So
Yeah.
I'm speaking, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, like no inhale or exhale, I'm just going to hold as long as I can. Is that right?
Yeah, just hold it neutral, and then in the Oxygen Advantage method, they call it a BOLT score, so your blood oxygen level test.
Right. I've heard of that.
And
Yeah.
so there's a little what's the word? It's very subjective. It's like, when is the first moment that you need to breathe without any you didn't have to swallow, or you didn't have any visual signs that you needed to breathe, and then your first breath has to be a slow breath in and out of the nose. So you count from the moment you hold your breath until You get to that point where you have to breathe, and that's your bolt score. And so what you're trying to do with the static breath holds for performance is you're just trying to extend your ability to handle high levels of CO2. And it's a long-term process, man. It is not, it's not something that you can get better at very quickly. I mean, it takes days, weeks, months, probably years. And if you take time off of it, it goes back down. So it's like something that you have to keep up with. But that's really kind of what freedivers do, is they get themselves more and more comfortable with the high CO2 levels.
So I do a lot of Kriya pranayama or root lock breathing. Basically, just squeezing at the root, inhaling up, holding at the top, and then kind of pumping and drawing the cerebral spinal fluid upward, right? And a lot of yogis, you know, this is Kundalini style, really big. So squeeze at the root, inhale up through the nose, sip in a bit more, hold for maybe about 30 seconds, do a few minutes of that. Is that considered a static breath hold or not, because it's neutral? Like for static breath hold, are we doing it for a few minutes? Are we aiming for 15 seconds, 30 seconds? Like how long are we aiming for?
The goal is to get over a medium urge. So is that considered a static breath hold? I mean, it would be, but I don't think that because you're also moving with it, you're not really holding that to the highest urge to breathe possible, are you? Or are you?
No, I am. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well then, yeah, I mean, if you notice too, that starts to extend, then you are getting, then you're starting to increase your CO2 tolerance for sure. So that would be considered a static breath hold for sure. The more breath you have, the better your breath hold's going to be. So you got to put that in consideration, you know. But if you're getting to that place where you're like dying for a breath, then you're there. You're getting to that's a serious static breath hold.
Man, breathwork for performance. This is so exciting. I've been having a lot of fun with it because, you know, I'm not an athlete, you know, growing up. I've never been the most athletic or anything like that. I've always liked basketball. That was my sport, and wakeboarding and whatever else. But it's cool to get into this and now build, like even just today swimming, you know, there was that point in the pool where you mentioned this earlier, like we have so much more left in the tank. I think of David Goggins, and he goes, when you want to give up, you still got 40% left in the tank, right? And I was in the pool and I was like tired. I'm like, no, F this story. Like this is the old me. This isn't me anymore. And then I kicked it into the next gear. I was like focusing on my breath. I felt stronger and all that. I'm like, oh man, yeah, I gotta remember this, because when I'm in this zone, I'm just building that strength. And it feels so good to have like done this whole journey of reconnecting with not only like my thoughts and my feelings, but my body. And that's part of the reason why, if anyone's listening, that you feel disconnected from your body, for me and a lot of people I've worked with, like doing Kriya pranayama or root lock breathing, where you're squeezing, like doing a Kegel, and then bringing that up and squeezing at the top, like that will get you in your body for sure. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, Miles, was like Steph Curry. You know, I've watched an interview with him where he goes, the person interviewing him said, what's the number one skill that you associate to your success? And Steph's going to go down as, it's debatable, but one of the top 5-10 NBA players of all time. It's not a debate that he's the best shooter of all time. Right. And if you watch basketball at all, the guy is always moving. He's always running around. He's like should be out of breath. He's able to lower his heart rate in like a matter of seconds. I forget exactly what the statistic is, but when he was asked, what is the number one skill that you attribute to your success, he said breathing. He goes breath work. So I'm curious, because like I haven't seen much around like how he actually is able to lower his heart rate in a timeout. Do you know, or would you have any ideas of how to lower your heart rate when you have that moment of recovery, right? Because imagine it's a timeout in a basketball game, so he's got about 90 seconds to recover.
I would say that's what it takes. It takes about 90 seconds to control your heart rate. So I don't know what he's doing exactly. If I think about him, he's got his mouthpiece out all the time. Yeah. And so he's doing a lot of mouth breathing, which is interesting. And I think for lowering your heart rate, actually mouth breathing is more effective. And I'm probably in the minority there because most people would say it's nose breathing. But mouth breathing, you can control the aperture. You can't control the aperture of your nose. It's only one size, right? A little bit with your tongue if you're talking about the ujjayi breathing or something, but really it's just you're limited. Where the mouth, you can just fine tune it. And so when you breathe in, your heart rate goes up. When you breathe out, it goes down. So if you breathe out more than you breathe in, then you can start to get your heart under control. And your heart follows whatever you're doing about 30 seconds. So if you jump up and you go start running, your heart doesn't start going up for about 30 seconds. Same if you plop down, you were just running, you sit there, your heart doesn't start to get back to where you already feel calm, but your heart is still raging. So you take big, short breaths in, about 80%, and you go out through the teeth, pursed lips, curled tongue if you want. As long as you can do, as long as comfortable. You make sure that you don't have an air hunger. If you have an air hunger, it's not going to work very well because you want to be able to be calm. And if you do about 6 of those, your heart rate will start to match how you feel. And if you keep doing them, you can get your heart rate below your resting heart rate if you're just in a really calm state. Now, if you're out in the middle of the court, or if you're in between jiu-jitsu rounds, then you're only going to be able to bring your heart rate down a certain extent, but you're going to get it from, maybe you're at 150, maybe you're at 130. My goal for guys that I train, we put a heart rate monitor on. In 90 seconds, we like to go from approximately 150 to under 100. It's hard to do. You can't do it every time, but you exert heavily, and then in 90 seconds, you try and get to down a third of what you're at.
See, I want to start practicing that. I think Curry's might even be down to 80 or something like that. So it's inhale
That's
up.
really good.
Oh, I should look it up right now. I don't even watch sports anymore, but the Warriors were my team growing up in the Bay, and now I just want to watch a Warriors game just to watch Curry and see if I can see what he's actually doing. But since I got I have my computer right here, I'll put it up because I did look at this a few weeks ago.
Well, so on my YouTube, I have several videos with a live heart rate monitor on.
Okay.
And I show the technique of how to do it. I think most of the time I'm in an ice bath when I do it. But you can see me talking normally. And I think there's one on there that I'm not. But and then you can see when my heart rate starts to get under control. And you can see how I'm breathing for it. And then in an ice bath, or if I'm not moving, I mean, I dip it below my resting heart rate. I can get, my resting heart rate's 55 or something. And I can get it into the 30s.
Yeah, guys, go to the show notes so you can check out that YouTube video. We have it linked in the show notes. So that'll be a good one to check out. And just to kind of close this out then, so it's an inhale up through, and I did look it up. He can't, according to Google, he can lower it to 80 beats per minute in the 90-second timeout. But
dang, that's crazy, man. Mine goes to 90 if I just stand up.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Right. So you inhale up and then you exhale with your teeth. You said clenched, or it's like
you do the longest exhale you can do. So what I tell people, just the simplest way is through your teeth.
Got it. Why is that?
Just an easy way. Well, because it allows you to let the air deflate without using effort. So you could use your lips if you wanted to. You could use your tongue. You could the goal is to just change the aperture so that the air deflates. And now your shoulders, your neck relax, everything can relax. And if you really get into the zone, you'll start to feel on your exhale, you'll start to feel your heartbeat. And then you can almost breathe in between the beats because you can feel the pressure. So as you're exhaling, you'll feel it. And so that's when, man, you've got this heart and brain coherence. You've got this interoceptive sense of what's going on inside, and you talk to your heart. I mean, I think we have more neurotransmitters in our heart and gut than we even do in our head. Like you just make that connection, and then you start to bring it down.
Oh, I love it. I could talk with you for days. I'm sure we'll do this again. And, just speaking about landing in your body, that's another great example of all of this is obviously going to help you to get more into your body and just learning how to regulate your nervous system. It's crucial, whether it's for your emotions, your mental state, and now where I'm currently at, performance. So super
Yeah.
stoked on that.
Could I
So,
share one more thing before
yeah,
we?
please. Yeah.
Okay, so you were talking about the root locks, and I love
Mhm.
that stuff too. I mean, that is the high that you get, man, and especially when we take over the circulatory system and we take over the lymph system and we're manipulating cerebral spinal fluid, all that great stuff. I've got a wonderful technique that I want you to try, if you don't mind. And
Yeah.
you please don't do it right now, but I'll just describe it. And so what I found is the best way to get to that sensation of the washing over of the cerebral spinal fluid. I used to try a long time to do the root locks, and I couldn't get there every time. It just didn't work for me every time. And so because that is focused, and that is the more yoga way, where you kind of focus behind on your back and you're kind of squeezing down low. But what I realized is, for the simple people like me, because I was very simple and I hadn't done this very long, is it was the pressure that I could create. The more pressure I could create, the better that I could cut off that return valve and let my head fill up. And so this is the best. If we still have time, I can share this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So after you've done some significant breath work, even 6 breaths, bam, you do 6 big breaths. Last one, you go all the way out, and you even lean over completely. And then you fill to the bottom. I'm just leaned over and I'm filling till it's just so much pressure I can't stand it. Then I lean up a little bit and I fill more. Then I lean up more, I fill more. I lean up one more time and my shoulders are back and I fill to the very top. Because I loved how you said that earlier, like you take a little extra sip. That's that inner thoracic pressure is like, that's the magic spot of just tapping on the buttons of the computer. So now you have so much pressure possible, and man, then you lock in that pressure. And even like when you empty a bottle of soda and you take a little swirl and it creates a vortex, if you do a tiny vortex, I'm getting real technical and goofy with you, but you do a tiny vortex and then you just hold on to that pressure for 10 or 15 seconds whenever you feel it start to build up, and then you let it go. As soon as you feel anything build up, you let go of the pressure first and then let go of the breath. Man, you get this euphoria. Or I get this, or the people I've shared this with get it all so quickly and so easily. And it's different than the way I learned it, because it's we used to do it from the back, but now all the pressure is just in front. And I learned that when you have that inner thoracic pressure, it actually pushes out around the heart, so you get a blood pressure drop. So your heart beats easier. So if you had a heart arrhythmia, your heart would actually get back on track. And this seems like a Valsalva maneuver medically, where it relaxes cerebral blood flow, pushes blood to your extremities, and allows your heart to beat easier. So all those great things are happening. And they're happening with the way that you described it too. This is just another fun way to try it if it's interesting at all.
Yeah, no, for everyone listening, there's a energy worker that I go see in the Santa Monica, which I should connect you with him. You might dig him, Miles, since you're down in SoCal. And his name's Peter Evans. I call him real life wizard. And a lot of people refer to his breath that he does very similar, probably the exact same thing as you describe. And he blasts you out with 3 breaths. It's just like some energy work. He bangs kind of on the solar plexus, has you like bend over on that last one, then hold it on the way up. And I mean,
Wow.
yeah, I've gone and seen him twice, and he just blasts you. I think part of it is that he is a real life wizard for sure, his energy.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
haven't ever heard anyone actually describe how or like I haven't seen anyone describe that breath work that he does other than what you just described right now. So I'm curious, like, is that something you just found and explored on your own, or where'd you pick that up?
I couldn't do the squeeze at the end. The Wim Hof, we squeeze to the head. It didn't work for me every time. I know people that have even popped blood vessels in their eyes. It would give me a headache if I continue to do it. The DMT Quest guy challenged me to heat up one hand hotter than the other. And in that zone that you get in that moment feels like the moment when you can do that. I've never been able to do that so far, and he still makes fun of me for that, but I can't do it. But so I practiced the full breath hold just for hours and hours and hours. And in this, when I would give myself a headache. And so I was like, how do I do this without giving myself a headache? And so I realized that it was from the pressure. If I just created if I created more pressure than anything else, if I cared more about the pressure than I did about pushing, then the amount that I had to push was like, I'm just tapping on it. I don't have to barely push at all. So it was just after just hours and hours of doing this stuff and wanting to make it feel good for me and not and avoiding the bad. Yeah.
I love it. That's so great. Well, thank you for sharing that at the end. That's really important. And yeah, everyone, I would encourage you to try that, as well as go to the show notes, connect with Miles. I obviously have my free online community called the Breath Club, and join mine and Miles. You'll pick up different things and meet different people. So check out all of that. There's going to be links to everything that we talked about, including DMT Quest, in the show notes. So check it out. And Miles, thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Hey, thank you so much. And one more thing, we got to tell people, don't try that anywhere. You can pass out so easily doing that maneuver that we just did, that Valsalva maneuver. So guys, don't do it anywhere where that if you did pass out, you would be safe. Don't do it while you're driving. Don't do it standing in the shower. Don't do it if you're meditating on the edge of a misty mountaintop. Just take a few steps away from the edge. Don't do it if you have metal singing bowls right around you. I'm telling you guys, it's so easy to pass out with that. So be safe, my friends.
Very true. Thank you for including that. Thanks so much, Miles.
All right, cheers.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode to the very end. I hope you got out of it just as much as I did. I always love talking about all the things that just help us to feel and perform at our best. But obviously, I am very partial to breath work, and I think you can hear it in my voice and my questions that I truly am a lifelong student, and I never really think that I will get there, because it was that thinking of there's an end destination that kind of got me in trouble in the first place. And if you know my story, you know what I'm talking about. All of that to say, I would love to have you in my Breath Club community. My Breath Club community is strictly about building community and teaching how you can actually apply these resources in real time. And we have a weekly call. In Miles's community, Breath Fitness, which is different than mine, also a free community, at least at the time of this recording, I poked around a little bit, and there's a lot of science and different things like that in his. So if you really want to geek out on the science, I encourage you to also for sure check out his community. And we're all doing this together. A rising tide lifts all ships, as they say. So I'm stoked that you're here. I'm stoked that you're interested in all this. And if you enjoyed this episode, please just make sure to share this podcast with a friend directly. It will help the show grow. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps the show grow. So thank you for considering to leave a review. If you want to go deeper with Soltara or Elan, you can find the links to connect with them in the show notes. And if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me, the easiest way to work with me is the free way, and that's by joining the Breath Club. The link to the Breath Club is in the show notes. And also know that I'm available for one-on-one support, that is coaching and guidance, as well as keynotes and breathwork journeys for conferences and events. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of The Soul Seeker.